I hope you're well. In this one, I'm making a quick, cheap and easy drilling guide for the Router multi-jig. Yeah, let me explain. So the multi-jig launched publicly last week. Thanks so much to everyone who made a purchase or placed a pre-order. It was a very popular launch. The next production run is in hand, with shipping expected in the second half of this month. I've had a couple of questions about whether I plan to offer drilling guides for the jig, and one was from 10 Minute Workshop Plus member Neil, who has a trim router but no plunge base for it. And the short answer is no, not really. I was conceived it as a router jig for workshop use, kind of on the flat horizontally. But I do understand that if, say, you're fitting handles during an install, it'd be very convenient to do them vertically with the doors swinging or the drawers already fitted. That's how I always did my handles when I was in the fitted furniture business. I get the doors swinging and paired up nicely, all the drawer fascias squared up and aligned with consistent gaps in the carcass. And then I'd want to fit the handles in situ, and obviously that's a bit more of a challenge with a router, even a small cordless trim router like this one. I do find myself reaching for more and more, and maybe we'll look at that in a future video. But anyway, back to the drilling guides. I made a few tests and proof of concepts for this, and it's not a complex thing to make, and they do work well, but you do need to be able to drill a 30mm hole for the guide bush and a smaller hole for the bit exactly on center and absolutely perpendicular. Now that's fairly straightforward with a drill press or pillar drill, but Plus member Niels says he doesn't have a drill press, so I've done this another way, just using a drill block. I'm starting with some 6mm and 12mm plywood scraps, and again I use plywood because it looks pretty in the video. Use whatever you've got, and they're about 75mm, 3 inches wide, and the finished guide will be squarish, but I'm using a strip maybe 250mm, 10 inches long, so that I can clamp it easily while I'm drilling. I've stuck the two pieces together with double-sided tape, and I'm just drilling a 5mm hole around the four corners roughly of where the finished piece will be, all through the 6mm ply, but only part way into the 12mm. I need to split these two pieces apart later on, then join them back together in exactly the same position. And I'm using a 5mm bit because I know that I have some of these 5mm steel dowel pins that I can use for this. But if you have, say, 6mm dowels, then drill a 6mm hole. It's just to keep the two parts registered, so use whatever you have that's available to you. I need to bore a 30mm hole through the 6mm ply to take the guide bush, and I'm just going to freehand this. It's not hard to do. You just have to watch the bit as it bites into the material and make sure it isn't cutting to one side more than the other, and then you can be pretty sure that it's drilling nice and straight. This is a Bosch Forstner bit. In my experience, they really hit the sweet spot between price and quality. Unfortunately, I completely messed up the shank of my original one, so this is brand new and cutting very cleanly as expected, at no expense spared for these videos. So that's all done and looking pretty nice, and you can see that the point of the Forstner bit has just pierced the 12mm ply underneath. We're going to use that to locate the point of our 8mm lip and spur or brad point bit, and I'm using the drill block to make sure that this stays nice and square as I drill right through. I'm using an 8mm bit because I want to fit a 5mm hardened steel bushing that's 8mm external diameter, and at the risk of stating the obvious, you should drill whatever size hole your bushing requires. With that done, I can split the two pieces apart, but before I do, I'm just going to mark the outer faces so I know which way is out. The guide bush just pushes in from the underside. It's deep enough to poke through, and I'm adding a kind of gasket or shim made from thin plywood that I had from another project. But again, it could be cardboard, it could be Correx sheet, or thin strips of wood. Use whatever you've got. It's just to make sure that the two parts sit flush and don't foul on the flange around the guide bush. This is all done with strong double-sided tape. Feel free to use glue if you prefer to. Just bear in mind that you'll be dedicating the guide bush to the jig, so make sure it's a spare or one that you bought specifically for the purpose. I've fitted the dowel pins into the 12mm ply and then joined the two halves back together with the pins keeping everything located. A little bit of pressure applied to the tape with the clamp, and then it's pins out, and I can trim the guide down a little bit to size and then clean up the edges with a bit of sanding. And the last thing to do is to fit the drill bushing. I bought these off Amazon. If you're buying in small quantities with next day delivery, you'll end up paying pounds for them instead of pennies. But it is a nice snug push fit, and the 5mm bits sit in there very well with no play at all. I know, that's the back of a drawer. So there you go, a quick and easy little drill guide for your router, multi-jig, or any jig, to be honest, that takes a 30mm guide bush. I did also get a question about using a 20mm drill bit instead of a router for the offset MFT extended holes. I have done that as well, but it's a little bit more complicated, so I'll cover that one in another video. Yeah, really pleased with this. No drill press required, and it certainly seems to be accurate enough for most of the things that I'm going to be doing. But I'll call this one done for this week. Thanks so much for taking a look. I'll catch you all again very soon. All right, take care.